Welcome to PEP. Today's topic is all about stress reduction. We all live in a modern world and we all have pressures and expectations and responsibilities, but so often this just becomes overwhelming and we become stressed out and we get caught in this vicious stress cycle. And the irony is that when we have to do our best, sometimes we're under the most stress. So this following video is going to explain and explore some natural ways that you can easily reduce and eliminate or at least cope with your stress better. Enjoy the video, and afterward don't forget to take the short validation quiz from the link below.
When we initially surveyed you guys, when you signed up for the PEP program, we asked you a few things, and the hot topic seems to always be stress. That's one of people's primary concerns. What can I do to reduce stress? So we're going to teach you some things today that we can do about stress. Now, me personally, when I get stressed out, I like to reach for a nice cold soda. Not to drink it, but to shake it. So it's very rare that you'll see me with a soda in my hand, but we're going to use this soda today to do a little bit of demo. Throughout the day, we encounter things that stress us out, that shake us up a little bit, or that shake us up a whole lot. So I'm going to pass this soda bottle around, and I want you to shake it indicative of the stress that you've encountered today. So if you haven't had much stress or had no stress, then pass it on. If you had a little bit, just shake it a little. If you had a lot, really shake it. It may. We're going to get to that. So keep on passing it, no throwing it. In order to understand stress and how to cope with it, we first have to define it. So stress, what is it? It's a noun. It's a physical, chemical, or emotional factor that causes bodily tension, both physically and mentally, and can be a factor in disease causation. Last week we walked through a little bit about how thought plays into the physiology of our bodies. So today we're going to really hone in on what stress does to us physically and emotionally. So who wants to open this bottle now? You can give it to the mean people that shook you up, right? So what would happen if we did open this bottle? It would create a big mess. It would explode, right? Now, what would happen if we did little things to release the pressure, like a forearm stretch or a neck roll or some deep breathing, if we just let a little bit out at a time, right? Or what if we just let it sit and chill and then opened it up a few hours later? Would a lot of that pressure, that stress have settled? So we have a tough day at work, demands from people, timelines, deadlines, all these things. We're thinking about bills in the back of our mind. Bills, good point. Is money, is financial, is that physical, emotional, or chemical stress? Emotional, all three, Tony. How is that possible? True. So let's play through the bills real quick. We're stressing about money. This is causing us a whole lot of worry. It's releasing that stress hormone cortisol, which is in our bodies. Then our finances affect our budget, and we have to make different choices as to what we eat. So we eat foods that aren't so healthy, and we put more toxins in our body. And then we end up having health problems, which causes more medical bills, which causes more financial stress, which causes family crisis, divorce, maybe a headache, lost productivity and profitability. Maybe we lose our job, and then that causes a whole nother host of financial stress. You see the cycle? A lot of them are all interrelated. So we're going to learn today how to not let this explode. How when we have a bad day, when we drive home in traffic, we've got all these pressures, we walk in the door, our spouse has had a great day and they're happy to see us. They say, "Hey, Deborah, how you doing?" And you say, "I don't want to talk to you right now. I've had enough." So we've got to learn to chill so we don't misdirect our stress and hostility at other people.
Then you got to add the children factor in there too.
Right. The children factor, absolutely. I've got a 16-year-old daughter, so I know all about that. So what's the first step in the stress reduction process? First step is to put our stress into perspective and realize that the very things that we're stressing about are probably less detrimental to us in the whole scheme of things than the effects that the stress is going to have on us, right? So, you use the stress effect with the bills and the disease and the whole financial circle there. Think about that. Okay, the bills are one thing. You got to make money, you got to pay the bills. But if you stress over it, it can compound that effect a whole lot. So the mind controls the body. And what happens to your body when you get stressed out? If you experience fear, anxiety.
Muscles tighten up.
Muscles tighten up. What else?
Blood pressure.
Blood pressure. Heart starts pumping. We get nervous. We get jitters. We maybe get a little anxious. Anybody ever been through a relationship turmoil, a breakup? What does it do to our stomach?
You lose weight.
Lose weight sometimes, or gain weight.
Or you eat too much. Or you eat too much and gain weight.
Some people overeat, some people don't eat, some people gain weight, some people lose weight, some people have diarrhea, some people, are constipated. I mean, it just creates a whole host of circumstances in our body. Why do these things happen to us physiologically? The mind, right? The mind, the brain, has this thing called a tail. We refer to it as the spinal cord. And then the spinal cord has a whole bunch of other little tails, a whole web, a network called, anybody? Nervous system. And this nervous system connects to all the organs and ultimately all the cells in the body. So these messages get relayed back and forth. So when the mind is in turmoil, it throws the stomach into a tizzy. It throws our hormones and our digestive enzymes off. And likewise, if we're putting junk into this system that's directly connected to the brain, what do you think it's doing to the brain? Is it causing some chemical imbalances there, maybe affecting the nerve transmissions as well? So there's a strong gut and mind connection. It's actually called enteric memory that our body has, this enteric communication system within. So stress starts with a thought, and it affects how our bodies work or don't work. And then stress opens the door for disease. Now, how does it do this? First thing, when we form a thought, 2 or more amino acids come together to form a bond, and this forms one molecule called a peptide. And a neuropeptide is essentially the chemical equivalent of thought. And these neuropeptides affect how our hormones are released in the body. And these negative thought neuropeptides trigger the release of cortisol. Now, cortisol in a small dose for a short period of time is good because it gives us our fight or flight, allows us to get out of the way, a harm's way, to swerve when the car cuts us off, or to jump up and run out of the building if it's on fire. But when we're exposed to cortisol over a long period of time, it becomes bad. It affects how the brain processes sugar, which then affects our memory, our concentration, and our focus. It can also shut down our immune system. It bonds to the receptor sites on our T cells or our lymphocytes, which are our soldiers. And when the cortisol bonds to these lymphocytes, it essentially turns off the switch to our immune system. And these T cells communicate with this fist-sized gland in our chest called the thymus gland, which pumps out more fighter cells. And it can literally shut this down and shrink it. And then our body, our immune system, loses the ability to remember how to defeat disease. So it literally turns our immune system off and makes us more susceptible to disease. Cortisol also creates an acidic environment in the body, and acid affects every single cell in our body. Remember, we're meant to be alkaline, and we're going to be talking about this a lot throughout the PEP series. It's going to be a recurring theme. So when we introduce an acidic environment in our body, it can shut down our enzymes. Now, enzymes are the building blocks, the foundations in our body that control every single function of life. And we start to affect them, a chain reaction happens. Physical tension happens, cramps our muscles down, pulls our spine out of alignment, causes us pain, and then that causes us more stress. Also reduces breathing. We did our breathing exercise last week. When you're stressed out, you can't oxygenate. When you can't oxygenate, you're cutting off your energy supply. And remember that cancer cannot thrive and survive in an oxygen-rich environment. Cardiovascular health, stress, one of the leading causes of heart attack and heart disease. Why? I had a woman after a seminar I did one time ask me a very good question. She said, well, if stress elevates the heart rate and the pulse, isn't that what exercise does? So wouldn't it technically be good for you? Something to ponder. It was a good point that she made. So I asked her a couple of questions that I'll ask you guys. How many of you guys could jump up right now with little or no effort and run a lap around this building? Who could do that? Yeah, pretty much all of us. Who could maybe run a mile or two as well if you had to? Now, who could get up and run a marathon right now with no training or no preparation? Anybody in the room? You can with some time and training, right? And most people that can run marathons have been through extensive training and preparation to build themselves up to that. So what happens with these little stressors in our life that act as motivators, that say, oh, swerve real quick because a car's coming over, or get up and run, those are good reactions. But what happens is when you dump a huge amount of stress on the body, all of a sudden you get handed your pink slip and you're unemployed, or your spouse walks in and tells you they're leaving, it hits you with such a load of stress that it puts this tension on your system, elevates your pulse, with no warning. All of a sudden you're running a marathon and you can't quit. It doesn't even stop when you sleep sometimes if you're fortunate enough to sleep. So your body is thrust into this marathon without any preparation or without any work, and it's constantly overworking your heart and your cardiovascular system. So I call the deadly combination of stress and pressure stressor. And in my opinion, I think that stress kind of triggers the survival of the fittest. I think that it weeds out the weak, if natural selection were coming into play. So those of us that let stress overtake us and succumb us, we're more susceptible to disease for all the reasons that I just listed and more. So how do we cope with stress? Well, oftentimes people will resort to having a cigarette. I worked with a client of mine for months, finally got her to quit smoking. She was clean for about 11 weeks, lost her job, and then what's the first thing she did? She went and bought a pack of cigarettes. Why? Or having a drink, or maybe resorting to drugs. People, if there was ever, what's that, Mike? Or food too, true. If there was ever a time to not do these things, it's when you're stressed out, because we just demonstrated that you're already creating a toxic environment. Now you're throwing more toxins into the mix. I once heard of a test they did. They took 4 groups of people. They brought in a control group, put them in a room, normal temperature, had them sit for a couple hours a day over a period of a few months. Then they brought in a group of people, put them in the room, and had them smoke for an hour or so for a couple weeks. And then they had a group of drinkers they brought in who drank for an hour or so. Then they had a group they called the stress group. They brought them in. They sat them down, they had them solve difficult math problems, they flashed the lights on and off, they subjected them to random noises, they changed the temperature dramatically, and before and after each session, they measured each group's blood, their pH, their toxicity levels, all these different things. Would you guys be surprised to find out that the stress group had more toxicity in their body after each session than the other 3 groups combined? Yeah, amazing. So how do we naturally deal with stress? Exercise. Stillman showed us some great, easy, anytime, no excuse exercises that we can do throughout the day to de-stress ourselves. Getting out, taking a walk is great as well. Posture, fully oxygenating. When you're breathing in deep and you're oxygenating yourself, guess what you're also doing? You're exhaling those toxins as well. So practice good posture, deep breathing. Sometimes I'll even do some stress breaths. I'll just real quick, in and out, makes you feel better. Smiling. We touched on this last week with our thought component. The simple act of smiling reduces positive hormones in the body, releases serotonin in the brain, which is a feel-good hormone that can counteract the effects of stress. So practice smiling throughout the day. I try to smile a few minutes at a time throughout the day when I'm driving or something like that. I'll put a big smile on. Now, people will say to me, Sean, you just don't understand what's happened today. How am I supposed to smile? It's so hard to smile when I'm stressed. And I say, yes, indeed it is, but it's equally as hard to be stressed out and mad when you're walking around with a big smile on your face, right? So turn a frown upside down and smile for a while. Nature. One of the best ways you can naturally reduce your stress is to get out in nature. There's ionic air in nature, which helps to counteract toxicity in our bodies. Sun provides vitamin D production in our skin. Vitamin D is a natural antidepressant, also reduces the risk of cancer and other stress-related diseases. If you've got a headache or if you've had a stressful day, if you can go home, take your shoes off, root your feet into the grass, the soil, or the sand, it's amazing what happens. It's almost like magic. It grounds you out and de-stresses you. Water washes away toxins, detoxifies our body. We're going to talk a lot about water throughout the PEP session, but always keep your water handy, and that will definitely help you reduce stress. Nutrition. Feeding the body good nutrition helps to energize us, helps to power us through the day, also helps to keep us clean and toxin-free.